You're watching this video right now, this exact second, this frame. You feel anchored in the present moment, riding the edge of time as it unfolds. But here's the problem. By the time your brain registered this sentence, the moment it referred to was already gone. What you experience as now is a reconstruction, assembled after the fact by a brain that is always, without exception, parsing the immediate past and calling it the present. You are not experiencing this moment. You are experiencing a memory so fresh, it still feels like reality. A postcard from the past that arrived just late enough to fool you. You have never, not once, experienced the actual present moment. This isn't philosophy. It's neuroscience. Every signal your senses collect, light striking the retina, sound vibrating through the cochlea, pressure registering on skin, takes roughly 80 milliseconds to be processed by the brain. That's the minimum delay between the world happening and you becoming aware of it. But it gets stranger. Research has shown that your brain doesn't just lag behind reality. It actively smooths your visual perception over windows of up to 15 seconds, averaging past input to construct a stable image. What you see right now is not a snapshot. It's a composite, a blended summary of what already happened, stitched together so seamlessly you never notice the editing. You are, at best, watching a slightly delayed broadcast of your own life. At worst, you're watching a highlight reel your neurons assembled without asking. And this isn't metaphor, this is measured. So if your experience of the present is always arriving late, if what you call now is really a smoothed over echo of what already happened, then what does the present moment actually refer to? Is it a point in time? A feeling? A neurological construction with no external counterpart? The deeper you press on this question, the less solid it becomes. And maybe that's not a flaw in the question. Maybe the reason science has moved on from the present moment is because the present moment was never a real thing to begin with. Most people carry an assumption so deep they never think to question it, that now is universal. That when you snap your fingers, everyone on Earth, everyone on Mars, every atom in every galaxy shares the same instant. That somewhere, buried in the machinery of the cosmos, there is a master clock ticking for all of reality at once. And why wouldn't you believe that? It's how life works. Clocks synchronize, countdowns align. Midnight strikes at New Year's, and the whole world seems to turn together. Isaac Newton believed it too. He built his physics on the idea of absolute time, a single, universal current flowing at the same rate for everything, everywhere. For 2 centuries, no one seriously questioned it. It was obvious. It was elegant. It was wrong. In 1905, a patent clerk in Switzerland quietly destroyed all of that. Albert Einstein's special theory of relativity is famous for bending time and warping space, but its most unsettling consequence isn't time dilation or length contraction. It's something far more fundamental, the death of simultaneity. Consider a simple scenario. 2 bolts of lightning strike at the same instant, one at each end of a moving train. A person standing on the platform sees both flashes at the same time, simultaneous. But a person seated in the middle of the train, moving toward one strike and away from the other, sees them at different times. One flash arrives first, the other follows. Here's the critical part. Neither observer is wrong. There is no hidden truth about which strike really happened first. The universe does not contain that fact. Simultaneity is not something that exists out there, waiting to be measured. It depends entirely on how you are moving through space. Not because of signal delays, not because of perception tricks, because time itself unfolds differently depending on your velocity. 2 observers, 2 equally valid versions of now, and no way to decide between them. Follow this to its conclusion. If simultaneity is relative, then there is no universal now. Your present moment and the present moment of someone flying past you at half the speed of light are not just slightly different perspectives on the same instant. They are genuinely different slices of reality. You don't merely disagree about what is happening. You disagree about what exists. And this isn't some abstract puzzle confined to physics lectures. GPS satellites orbit the Earth at thousands of kilometers per hour and sit in a weaker gravitational field than your phone. Time passes at a measurably different rate for them. If the software in your phone didn't correct for this difference dozens of times a day, your location would drift by kilometers. You already live in a world where now is not shared. You just never had a reason to notice. Now take everything you've just learned and walk it down a quiet street. The physicist Roger Penrose proposed a thought experiment that has haunted philosophers of time ever since. 2 people pass each other on a sidewalk. One is strolling casually toward the Andromeda galaxy. The other is walking in the opposite direction. Their speeds differ by barely a few kilometers per hour, the most ordinary motion imaginable. But Andromeda is 2.5 million light-years away, and at that distance, even this tiny difference in velocity tilts each person's plane of simultaneity in opposite directions. For one of them, an alien civilization in Andromeda is still locked in debate over whether to launch an invasion fleet toward Earth. For the other, the fleet has already been dispatched. Same sidewalk, same Tuesday afternoon, same gentle breeze. And yet their present moments, projected across the vastness of space, contain entirely different realities. This is not a metaphor. It is not a thought experiment designed to be provocative and then safely ignored. It is a direct, calculable consequence of special relativity. The math does not flinch. Let the scale of this settle in. Andromeda sits roughly 2.5 million light-years from Earth. At that distance, a walking speed of just 1.5 meters per second, a casual stroll, is enough to tilt your plane of simultaneity so dramatically that your now at Andromeda shifts by days, in some formulations, weeks. This is not a rounding error buried in the decimals of an equation no one uses. It is a direct mathematical consequence of Lorentz transformations, the same equations that underpin every working piece of relativistic technology on Earth. You think walking speed is trivial, irrelevant to the structure of the cosmos. But relativity says otherwise. It says your footsteps are enough to rearrange what counts as the present across cosmic distances. The universe does not have a current moment. It has an infinite number of them, all equally valid, layered on top of each other like shuffled pages of a book no one is reading in order. Stay with the logic. If different observers have different present moments, and none of those moments is more valid than any other, then something deeply uncomfortable follows. Events you consider to be in your future are already part of someone else's present, and events you call your present are already from another frame of reference, the past. There is no objective line separating what has happened from what hasn't. And this leads to one of the most radical ideas in all of physics, the block universe. The proposal that past, present, and future are not separate categories, that they all exist simultaneously, frozen together in a four-dimensional structure called space-time. You are not moving through time. You are embedded in it. Every moment you have ever lived. Every moment you will ever live. Already there. Already laid out. Like frames in a film strip that no one is projecting. Think of time not as a river that flows, but as a landscape that simply is. In the block universe, what physicists call eternalism, every moment exists the way a place exists. Tuesday is not something that happens and vanishes. It is a location. It has coordinates. It sits in the four-dimensional structure of space-time, just as Paris sits on the surface of the Earth. Your birth is there. Your death is there. The conversation you'll have tomorrow already occupies its position in the block, as fixed and real as anything in your past. So why does it feel like time moves? Why does it feel like the future hasn't happened yet? Because your consciousness processes the block sequentially. You experience one moment, then the next, then the next, and this creates the sensation of flow. But the flow is in you, not in time. You are like a reader whose eyes move across a page. The story feels like it's unfolding, but the words were already there before you arrived. Nothing is being written. Your attention simply moves through what was always complete. In March of 1955, Albert Einstein lost his oldest and closest friend, Michele Besso. They had known each other for decades. Besso had been a sounding board during the very development of relativity. When Einstein wrote to Besso's family, he did not offer the usual comforts. Instead, he wrote this: "He has departed from this strange world a little ahead of me. That means nothing." For us believing physicists, the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. This was not poetry, it was precision. Within the block universe, Besso's life had not ended. It still existed. Every conversation, every afternoon, every breath, fixed at its coordinates in space-time. Death was not an erasure, it was a local perspective. One slice of the block mourning another, unaware that the whole structure remained intact. Einstein himself died just weeks later. Not every physicist accepts the full block universe. Some favor what's called the growing block model, the idea that the past and present are real, but the future is not yet. Time, in this view, doesn't sit still, it accumulates. New moments are added to the structure like layers of sediment, one after another, with the present as the leading edge. Then there is presentism, the intuitive view that only the current moment exists. The past is gone. The future hasn't arrived. It's how most people naturally think about time, and it's the hardest of the three to reconcile with relativity. This matters far beyond physics. If the block universe is correct, then free will, regret, anticipation, and the fear of death are not responses to reality. They are responses to an illusion, artifacts of a consciousness moving through a structure that was always already complete. The debate remains open. Physicists, philosophers, and mathematicians continue to disagree. But the weight of the physics, the equations, the experiments, the measured behavior of time itself, tips heavily toward the block. So if the present moment doesn't exist in physics, if it appears nowhere in the equations, nowhere in the structure of space-time, then why does it feel so overwhelmingly real? Because your brain was never designed to understand reality. It was designed to survive it. A creature that somehow perceived the full complexity of space-time, the relativity of simultaneity, the absence of a universal now, the frozen totality of the block, would be paralyzed. You can't outrun a predator while contemplating eternalism. What natural selection needed was something simpler. An organism that could act inside what felt like a present moment. A narrow, urgent window where threats are immediate, food is graspable, and time appears to flow in exactly one direction. The present moment is not a window into how things are. It is a user interface, a dashboard built for survival, not truth. You don't see the code running underneath your experience. You see the icons, and you were never meant to look deeper. In the 1890s, the psychologist William James gave this illusion a name, the specious present. He argued that the psychological now is not an infinitely thin slice of time. It's a window. Most research places it at roughly 1.5 to 3 seconds wide, though some studies stretch it to 12 seconds for more complex perceptions. This is the chunk of duration your brain labels as happening right now. Inside that window, your neurons stitch together sounds, images, and sensations into something that feels seamless and immediate. Before the window, memory. After it, anticipation. But the window itself is the only thing you ever experience as the present, and it's not thin, it's smeared. A blur of very recent input assembled into the feeling of a single moment. The width of that smear is not set by the universe. It's set by the architecture of your neurons. The present is not a fact about time. It's a fact about your brain. Here is where it deepens further. If the present is a neurological construction, then what about the feeling that time moves forward? That sensation of moments passing, one after another, in a single irreversible direction. Where does that come from? Not from the laws of physics. Most fundamental equations are time-symmetric. They work identically whether you run them forwards or backwards. A ball thrown in the air, described by Newton's laws, looks perfectly natural in reverse. So why doesn't life feel reversible? The answer is entropy. The universe began in a state of extraordinarily low entropy, the Big Bang, and has been sliding toward greater disorder ever since. This is the thermodynamic arrow of time. Your brain forms memories in the direction of increasing entropy. That is why you remember yesterday but not tomorrow. The sensation of the present moving forward is not a feature of time. It is a byproduct of entropy's one-way ratchet, disorder accumulating, pulling your awareness along with it. Stephen Hawking identified 3 arrows of time: the thermodynamic, the cosmological, and the psychological. All 3 point in the same direction, but none of them require a now. None of them carve out a present moment. Now let the weight of this settle in. They simply create the feeling of one. If the block universe is real, if every moment already exists, if the future is as fixed as the past, if now is just a neurological bookmark in a structure that was never unfolding, then why does anything feel urgent? Why does it feel like your choices matter? Why do you agonize over decisions if the outcome is already laid out at its coordinates in spacetime? There is a vertigo that comes with this idea, and it's worth naming honestly. If you are not a being moving through time but a pattern frozen within it, a slice of the block, reading itself, convinced it is choosing when it is only experiencing, then free will becomes difficult to defend. Purpose becomes a story you tell inside a structure that never needed one. Ambition becomes motion that was always already still. This is the hardest implication of everything we've discussed. It doesn't just challenge your understanding of time. It threatens the entire framework through which you assign meaning to being alive. And there is no clean way to resolve it. Not yet. So instead of rushing past this discomfort, stay in it for a moment. Let it press against you. Because what comes next will only matter if you felt the full weight of what it's answering. The physicists who understand this most deeply do not live in despair. Sean Carroll, one of the clearest voices in modern physics, argues that the block universe doesn't diminish meaning, it reframes it. If every moment of joy exists eternally within the block, then joy is not fleeting, it is permanent. It doesn't disappear. It was never going anywhere. Carlo Rovelli takes a different path. He suggests that time may dissolve entirely at the quantum level, but that, at the human scale, time remains deeply real as an emergent phenomenon, no less meaningful for being constructed. And then there is Lee Smolin, who pushes back against the entire framework. Time is real, he insists. The present is real. Physics has overextended its metaphors and confused the map for the territory. 3 brilliant minds, 3 different answers, none of them settled, and perhaps that is the point. The uncertainty isn't the frontier. Try holding it this way. Imagine you are walking through a museum. Each room is a moment of your life. The first room is your birth. The last room is your death. And every room in between, every conversation, every loss, every quiet afternoon is already built. The paintings are hung. The light is set. Nothing in the museum will change because you walked into it. You cannot rearrange the rooms. You cannot add new ones. And yet, you are the one walking through them. The experience of turning a corner and discovering something you didn't expect is not diminished by the fact that the room was always there. You still gasp. You still feel the weight of what you see. The room doesn't need to be new for the encounter to be real. This is what the block universe actually offers once the vertigo passes. It doesn't rob life of meaning. It relocates it. Meaning doesn't live in the moment being fresh or unrepeatable. It lives in the consciousness that meets it. You are the only part of this equation that experiences anything at all, even if movement through the museum is itself the final, most beautiful illusion. Here is one final fact, and it may be the quietest devastation of all. In the fundamental equations of physics, Schrödinger's equation, Einstein's field equations, the mathematics of the Standard Model, there is no variable for now. Time appears as a parameter. It's there, woven into the formalism, labeled with a small italic t. But nothing in the math distinguishes one moment from any other. There is no t sub-present, no special marker that flags a particular point on the timeline as the current one. Every value of t is treated identically. The equations do not care which moment you happen to be experiencing. Physics didn't forget to include the present. It looked at the structure of reality and found no place where the present was needed. The universe runs on mathematics that are perfectly complete and perfectly indifferent to the idea that any moment is more real than another. You started this video believing you were in the present moment. You felt it, the immediacy of the screen, the sound of these words arriving in real time. But now you know what's underneath that feeling. Your brain delays every perception by at least 80 milliseconds. Your visual system averages the past 15 seconds into a smoothed composite. Your sense of now is a specious present, a blurred window defined not by the universe, but by the architecture of your neurons. And that's just the biology. The physics is even more unforgiving. Over a century ago, relativity erased universal simultaneity. The block universe flattened time into a frozen 4-dimensional structure where every moment exists with equal weight. Entropy created the sensation of forward motion, not because time flows, but because disorder only accumulates in one direction. There is no privileged present. There never was. You have spent this entire video inside an illusion, and so has every human who has ever lived. If the present doesn't exist, then perhaps the pressure to live in the now is itself misguided. Perhaps the better question was, never am I present, but am I aware? Awareness doesn't require a privileged now. It doesn't need a universal clock or a flowing river of time. It only requires attention, and attention might be the one thing you actually control, if control itself isn't another illusion. There is no tidy answer here. There was never going to be. You can't seize the moment. The moment was never yours to hold. But the fact that it feels like it is, that somewhere inside this frozen, timeless block of space-time, something lights up and says, I am here, I am now, that might be the most extraordinary thing in the universe. If this changed how you think about time or about yourself, leave a comment and tell me, do you think the present is real? I want to know where you landed. And if you want more videos that make the floor disappear beneath your feet, subscribe. There is much more ahead.